It's 8:17 a.m., and you're tying your shoes while checking the time again. You're not late. Nothing is technically wrong. But as you scroll through your phone for a second, you see someone your age announcing a promotion, a new apartment, a side project already halfway done. And something in you quietly drops. Why does it feel like everyone else is moving faster? What you may be experiencing is the feeling of falling behind, this quiet sense that your pace isn't matching the world around you. In this video, we'll slow that feeling down and look at where it comes from, why it lingers, and what it may really be saying. Falling behind is when your timeline starts to feel wrong, even if your life is still moving. It's not about one event. It's about comparison stacking up in small, almost invisible ways until your own progress feels too slow to count. One common reason is constant exposure to other people's milestones without seeing their full story. You don't just see one success, you see dozens, lined up back to back, every time you open an app. Your brain doesn't register that these moments are curated and scattered across different timelines. It reads them as happening all at once. So your steady, ordinary Tuesday starts to feel late by comparison, even if you're exactly where you plan to be. Sometimes, it comes from tying your worth to visible progress. Promotions, relationships, savings goals, fitness routines, these are easy to measure. Inner growth isn't. Learning how to speak up, setting boundaries, recovering from burnout, those changes are quiet. They don't come with applause. So if you've been doing slower, internal work, it can look like nothing is happening. And when there's no visible marker, your mind may interpret that silence as stagnation. Over time, another layer shows up when you've taken a different path than the people around you. Maybe you changed careers. Maybe you paused school. Maybe you moved back home for a while. When your timeline bends, it can feel like it broke. You watch peers follow a straight line while yours curves and loops. Even if the curve makes sense for your life, the difference can still feel like delay. It's a weekday afternoon, and you're sitting at your desk, half working, half thinking. A coworker just shared news about a new certification they completed. Everyone congratulates them in the group chat. You type congrats. And mean it. But after you send it, you lean back and stare at the ceiling. You think about the course you considered signing up for. The idea you keep postponing. The savings goal you haven't reached yet. Your chest feels tight, not with jealousy exactly, but with urgency. Like you're running a race you didn't realize had started. If you've been there, you're not strange. You might know someone who lives like this. This is what falling behind can look like. It doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just whispers, hurry. But there's something people often miss about this feeling. The sense of being slow is usually built on invisible assumptions. Assumptions that life has one correct timeline. That success is linear. That speed equals value. Most of these ideas were picked up quietly, from school systems, family expectations, social media rhythms. They settled in without you noticing. So when your life unfolds at a different pace, your mind treats it like a mistake instead of a variation. It can help to gently question the timeline you're measuring yourself against. Not in a dramatic way. Just in small moments. When the thought "I'm behind" shows up, you might ask, behind compared to who? And then get specific. A friend from college? A stranger online? A sibling with different responsibilities? Often, once you name the comparison, it loses some of its authority. It becomes one reference point, not the rule book of your life. Another quiet shift is to widen what counts as progress. Not everything meaningful is visible. Maybe you've learned to rest without guilt. Maybe you've stopped answering messages that drain you. Maybe you've survived a year that took more energy than anyone saw. Those things don't always look impressive from the outside. But they change the foundation of your life. This works because your brain tends to focus on measurable outcomes. When you deliberately include internal shifts in your definition of progress, you balance the scale. You start noticing that movement doesn't always look like acceleration. Sometimes it looks like stabilization. There's also a practical piece that can soften the rush. Instead of comparing full chapters, compare the next small step. If someone finished a marathon, you don't have to match the marathon. You can focus on lacing up your shoes. If someone launched a business, you don't have to match the launch. You can outline one idea. When the frame shrinks, the pressure often shrinks with it. This doesn't remove ambition. It just separates pace from panic. Because sometimes feeling slow doesn't mean you lack ability. It may mean you're carrying more than you admit. Work stress, family obligations, financial strain. Emotional recovery from things you rarely talk about. Speed looks different when the load is different. And sometimes, what feels like delay is actually discernment. You're taking longer because you're thinking carefully. You're not jumping into decisions just because everyone else is. From the outside, that can look hesitant. From the inside, it can be thoughtful. None of this means comparison will disappear. It's human to look sideways and measure. But the next time the thought "I'm behind" lands in your chest, you might pause before accepting it as fact. It may be a signal to check your assumptions, not your worth. This is for people who move quietly. For people whose growth isn't loud. For people who look around and wonder if they missed a memo about how fast life is supposed to go. You are not late to your own life. You are on a path that includes pauses, curves, and seasons that don't always show up in highlight reels. Feeling slow compared to others doesn't automatically mean you are. Sometimes it just means you're looking at your inside next to someone else's outside. And that comparison was never going to feel fair. If you'd like to sit with more reflections like this, you're welcome to stay here.